Looks like I might be live after all. Yes. Okay. I'm just posting on LinkedIn that we are live. Okay. So give me a second, guys. Okay. Okay. So hello, everyone. I'm Sudha Jamthe, and this is Weekly Wed. The topic originally promised was we are going to show you a hands-on exercise using Python to build LLM end-to-end. And there's a change in plan. I'm not going to show you Python, but we're still going to get to LLMs. And how are we going to build this end-to-end LLM? So I'm Sudha Jamthe, and what I'm going to focus on is, as a technology futurist, I'm always looking at the ecosystem and shift in ecosystems. What are the gaps in technologies that are being built? What should be built, and what's happening? And so I had done this 4-part webinar. I'm going to share my screen, and there is. Let me find that. Oh, I'm in a bit different window. Let me go back. So I'd done like a 4-part webinar. So I'm going to go back to the 4th part. So we covered like a 4-part webinar covering what is LLM and how they work. And then the 3rd part was the whole landscape, and the fine-tuning part was the final one. And that was in November. So I'm going to go back to that. And I'm going to start with a quiz on what do LLMs do. So for those of you who are here, I would love for you to participate and answer on the chat. And this is being live streamed to YouTube, where it'll get recorded. I'm not going to be able to check that. And onto LinkedIn, where I will check and answer questions. So if you're here on Zoom, feel free to speak up or go off camera if you don't want to be in the recording, or you can always chat your questions if you don't want your voice to get recorded also. So I'm starting with this question on what are LLMs? What are large language models? And I'm going to stop the screen. Let me see the Zoom where you guys are. Okay, so what I'm going to do here first is we're going to have like a little quiz, and I want us to get to the same page on what the LLMs do. And I'm not just trying to buy time to get to the changes that has happened, because I believe there is a fundamental shift. What I was telling you as here are the models, that's changed. There are newer models. And we saw a speaker come in a couple of weeks back from Latimer and said Latimer is a LLM. And they had actually taken GPT 3.5 and then built this LLM on top of it. Right. So there is a slight shift we are seeing a lot of different LLMs. And just last night, as I was getting ready for today, I saw there is a LLM that can actually act as a software engineer first in the world, and it does this with 14% accuracy. Even if you flip a coin, it'll be 50%. But there was a lot of excitement about that. Okay, so I would love for you to just answer in a chat if you want. And what is a LLM? What is a large language model? There's no, you guys have been through this. You can answer this, guys. What are large language models? Okay, what are large language models trained on?
Usually on large volumes of text, Sudha.
Large volume of text, okay. And so what is a large language model? So it is essentially an AI. And we've seen, in the previous traditional AI, we've seen neural networks, and an LLM is a neural network. So I'm going to share my screen back. And thank you for that. 1 second. Is this view good, guys? I'm not putting it in the full share mode. Is that all right?
Yeah, this is okay.
Okay, thank you. So, large language models, what do they do essentially? So, they're trained on large volume of data. So, they are doing next word prediction. Okay. Can you give me an example of where we are seeing large language models being used?
In Google search, maybe?
Yes, all kinds of search. When we go to search, it
Yeah,
is actually, if you think about it as next word prediction. When you go into
yeah,
Google, it is searching, right? It is before it searches, it's actually going to come and do a guess
right.
for you, right? And
Yeah,
what is another one? That's a good one. Thank you. So all search has now incorporated LLMs. So earlier search engines had huge volume of data, and I'm going to stop my share. So you said large language model is trained in large volume of data. Search engines had large volume of data. Google had large volume of data from all our searches. Same for Bing and every other search engine that's out there. But Google is the bigger one, right, which holds the majority market share. And they had large volume of data from all our searches, and they trained using that, and they got us search results. Is that a large language model? Today, search, Google, and Bing are have incorporated large language models. But in the past, they were using large language corpus, and they were training. They were using AI. We just didn't make a big deal about it. We just said we search and they fetches the results. So what are the two things that changed in search? I'm just taking Google search. You want to see a Google search window? I can do that. So what has changed? And one of the things I tell every one of you, and I tell myself every day, is anything that you want to learn, the AI is all around us. It is so pervasive. There is an AI that is already up in our regular activity that can give us the answer. So if you thought, okay, what is an LLM? I don't remember the difference between past AI and its generative AI and this, like everything seems like generative AI and so much buzz. Um, you just say, and if you think, okay, what is LLM doing? It's making an X word prediction. You said, oh, I remember seeing this in Google. You can go and get Google to give you the answer. Okay. So let me go back, and I'm going to share my Google window screen with you now. This is the thing I have to do with the Chrome I'm using. Hopefully I'll stop jumping across windows and coming out of share once I switch to my Mac. Okay, so if I say um, this is if I so what I did here is I went to Google search and I just pressed uh, to start to type, right? I literally pressed on this space bar, and it is showing all this from my past search, right? This is not anything different, right? Google always was trying to get me remember my search, and from my search it was getting information. It was always doing that. Okay, so if I say I want to, I always do this, right? And if you see, it is not even the full word. I want to, I just do a letter. And I want to draw a cat for you. I don't want to draw a cat for you. I want to dance with somebody. Oh, that's a lovely song. So I want to dance with, uh, what am I doing? LL, and it stopped, right? It's still giving me LL, all. Okay, with llama. I love that. Okay. So what it is doing is it is guessing, right? And I'm going to stop the share. So, question for you: what is the difference between Google from the past, where it would get me the uh, trained on a large language model, large set of data from its own memory? So yes, thank you, Emmanuel. So large data available. What else? So it's guessing the next word. Was it always getting guessing the next word? So Google could be this closed product which has its own data set, and it is trained on the large volume of data set, and it is making a prediction, and it's recommending what I would be guessing in the past, right? Before this whole buzz with LLMs. But it is using LLMs. So if I go to Google, and I actually have a different Google profile that I want to switch to, because I have signed up for an AI powered version, right? There is a Google Lab thing. What is different? So if you take Google as an example, I went to Google and it showed me my past search results. And based on that, I could say it's guessing based on that. What is it doing? It is doing LLM. That's the new thing. So I'm going to go back to Google to a different profile where I have given them permission, right? Because they have a labs option, and I've for their new generative AI search. So they have not incorporated AI, the LLM, into everything. They have this thing called the search lab, and I gave permission. So you can, I think it's open for everybody. You can go there and you have to give permission, and which I did on this profile. So now if I say this is a different one, I want, it's not giving me the I want to dance with somebody, because this is a different profile of Sudha. Oh, it is showing Whitney Houston. Okay, I want to, uh, so it is still doing the guess. So let me say I want to dance with somebody. I want to dance with a llama. Let me go back to what I was doing before, right? And so now you see it is generating. So the result it is getting, so at the top it is generating, and then there is a, I didn't know there was a llama song. Okay, there's a lot of llama song. God. Okay. Um, so the top portion, it's actually generating, and this is, it's saying generative AI is experimental, and you can learn more. And then it talks about llamas, and they make them great square dance partners, blah blah blah. Okay, so you can do a lot of other things, and then it brings a chatbot. How does a llama dance differently than a human? Okay, so now it got out of the chat and it is giving me stuff, right? It is going back, and it is still okay. Still, it shows me the chat option, but it is continuing on to give me the uh, results. And then it modified it. It says, how does a llama dance differently? How I want to dance with the llama. What did I say? Did I not say I want to dance? I want, how does the llama dance differently? Okay, so what is happening here? I want to bring us back to LLM. So you said Google search is an example. I agree, Google search is an example. Google search is incorporating the LLM, and it is showing me, it is generating content. So what is an LLM doing? If I want to find out what is an LLM and I've like forgotten everything, or there is too much chaos in the news being thrown every day, and I say, okay, LLM is trained on large volume of data. Who's trained on large volume of data? Search. So I go to Google, and then with Google, I'm saying, okay, I chat and I find out that they give me an option to join this experimental latest greatest search, which I've signed up. I don't need to know what it is about. I did, and I limited what they get access to my search history so that I'm not giving the world. And then I chat with it. It is guessing the next word. So, okay, so it is making a next word prediction. I got that. And then it is generating. So I got that. Is it doing anything else? You can just say no if you think there isn't anything else. So we are trying to get to the bottom of what's an LLM? What does it do? Google search supposed to have it. Can I find out? So that we can get our answer to what do LLMs do. And what I'm doing here is I want us to get to a place where uh, we have a common starting point on LLMs before we get to this building this LLM, fine tuning. What does it take to build an LLM? So what are the things it is doing? It is making the next word prediction. It's trained on large volume of data because it's Google. It did the generating piece. Is LLM all about generating? Yes or no question.
No, Sudha, I think it's about recognition and generation, I think, right?
Okay, so I'm going to park that. It is about what?
Recognition.
Regulation?
It's about recognizing the languages, recognizing the word, recognizing the context of of the of the subject matter being questioned
Okay.
on it, right?
Okay,
Go ahead.
recognizing the context
Yeah,
and
and
about
also it is through
yeah.
generation. Yeah,
So it has two parts. You're saying it is understanding context and it is
yeah,
generating.
that's right.
Okay.
Understanding. That's what it is.
Okay. So what is good point? So um, it
Mhm.
is generating. So what did you see on the screen? As soon as we went to Google, it started generating. Then it was guessing next word, right? It was making some
Yeah,
prediction. So the prediction is always there, right? Every AI does that. So it was predicting. So it was predicting the next word. Then I said, okay, now go find the search for me. And then it was giving a generating. It was generating something, and it was talking, right? And then it gave me, it fetched the search results, which is what it was supposed to do in the first place. And then there was a chatbot which was continuing to chat. So I said, how does a llama dance? And then the thing was like, how is it better from a human? I could understand, it could understand the context. So now, if LLM is trained with lots of volume of data, it's an AI, and all AI is doing is creating some pattern and make some stats model in its brain so that it can serve us to make prediction. So it's making a prediction. It's all trained in words. It's spitting out words back. LLMs are multimodal, so it can do a lot more than just words, but let's stick with words. And uh, it is predicting words, right? And then it is generating. So that's the second part you said. And then you said it understands context. So from a simple conversational context, if you say what is context, and it says I asked it a first question, I asked the next question, and it understood that I'm talking the same topic, like unlike Alexa, who would say something and then like forget the context, right? Now what does context mean? If I'm technically building a product which is trained on words, large volume of words, it is going to do some magic AI in its memory, and it is going to make prediction. It is going to suggest the next word for me. It's just going to predict the next word, and it is generating the content. So in the way it is built in the brain of the algorithm, it's different from past AI, where it's not just predicting from one word from whatever it is in its memory. It is predicting the word, and it's forming full English sentences. We're talking in English. And so there's the generation part. So what does context mean in that sense? So if you want to build tech, which is an AI model trained on large volume of data, and it is going to predict the next word, and it is going to do that by generating the word. We are here together so far, and then it is understanding context. So it's chatting with me. I would add chatbot, but let's keep moving. And it is understanding context. So what does context mean? How do you train? So suppose we had huge volume of data, we are training an AI, it is going to generate prediction of words, it is going to generate the word. So for those of you who are watching on LinkedIn, not engaging with me yet, I'm dissecting what is an LLM. Instead of just joyfully saying, yeah, LLM, here's one more LLM, let's go build this chatbot with LLM. I want you to know two things at the end of this. We are going to get to the different LLM capabilities and how we'll get to building the kind of LLM that you want. At least understand what is the latest definition of LLM and what's being thrown at us every day. But I want you to get to the bottom of understanding LLM a bit deeper. And second, I want you to go find your answers on your own with whatever you're seeing, because they're throwing LLMs at us in every possible product. Okay, so what is context in that sense? So you're training and taking huge volume of data, you're training AI. And again, for those of you who have taken my class and are very smart and understand the difference between training AI and inference AI, uh, This they building is the technology industry or the data scientists building models, and then we are building the next level modeling with your own data, so you can build application layer. So when we saw Google search engine, they built the model, Google built the model, then they built the search as a product. Like there is GPT models, and then chat GPT was on top of that, so that's the application layer. Okay, so when we are talking about context, the context is that the chatbot is understanding what I asked previously, so that it gives me the next answer relative to that, and did not say llama who and then go off, afresh, right? uh, that is the understanding context in English. So when they're training, which means the people who are training, the data scientists or people who are building model and throwing one more model at us, uh, they are training in such a way that the LLM understands context. That's the big holy grail here, because it is different from the previous chatbots which did not retain context. So what is that? Any guesses? So it is understanding context. You want to see the Google screen back? I can give you a real chatbot that can talk to you, like Gemini or ChatGPT, and it is understanding context. What does that mean? In a technical sense,
I,
what is context? And there's no bad answer, guys. You can tell me.
I think
Um,
it's basically based on the application of what you're looking for, right? So I think let's say if you're asking some question related to the shopping or related to the uh, medicine or related to travel. So I think
okay.
that's what the context or domain of question. I think that's what it would be a context. But I
Context
think
would be the domain of question. And I see a comment here. It would remember the user's past search if the user is logged in. Okay, that's actually very good. I'm going to come to that, Ananya. So let me see. Renee has something similar to what Suresh is saying. So context means history of the conversation, being able to understand appropriate meaning of certain words with more than
yeah,
one meaning. Okay, understanding meaning of more one, so understanding multiple meaning of one word exactly is not context, but that is also an LLM capability. But thank you for that, Renee. Um, so Ananya actually said that Google search will remember users past search history. So if I'm logged in, that's exactly what happened, that I showed my Google where I had not signed up for the new generative AI capability of Google search, and I just go to Google search. It remembers my past history, and it is
right.
giving prediction, right? Is that an LLM? That's not an LLM. What is an LLM? So LLM is a large language model. So in its brain, let me give you a little bit, right? We did this in the, and this, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen, I realize. Okay. So, so in its brain, an LLM is storing information differently compared to the search. So the past search where it could go back into past search results. That's very important. It has my history. It for context. So I mean, some of these words they use are English words that kind of throws us off balance. So if it has my past history of what words I have searched, that's exactly what Google was doing, but it was not doing LLM. So LLM is used using a different kind of architecture. It is not doing traditional AI, which was machine learning, deep learning, and going back into its memory and getting the word. So when I give a word, says, "Oh, Sudha has talked about llama, and she's talked about dancing, and let's talk about this, get this answer for her." What it is doing and fetching one of the answers from its trained memory is not what LLM does. So it is trained on a new kind of architecture that is called transformers. So now you guys tell me, when in that sense, when I say context, so context could mean that in an English sense that I'm talking about something and you're giving me continuation of the topic. That's what you're saying. Renee said, including history of the conversation. So I asked about something and I asked about something else, and you're continuing to give that to me. So for those of you, I see a few more people joining in. We are dissecting what's an LLM before we get into anything. We are not going to see Python on the screen. And those of you who wanted the Python, we're going to bring that speaker to do the end-to-end building of machine translation. But before we get to machine translation, we need to know what is an LLM, how is it different, and what I'm here to tell you is whatever we learned as LLM in my last webinar, that was the fourth one in November, I want you to throw it out the window, because today we are talking about LLM as like a new model trained from scratch, which is what we were going to learn, or a whole model that exists and it's fine-tuned to do something else, like we learned with Latimer. We are hearing about chatbots as LLM, and you guys just told me that Google search is a great example of LLM. So where we are at is Google search is trained on lot of data, and it is using my past data, but it is not fetching from my past data and just giving that. It is generating. So that's the LLM piece. So what I'm going to show you is how an LLM stores in its memory is different. It is trained using a large language model as a large data corpus, which is language, words. It is storing differently in its memory called transformer model. And so it is creating a mental map of words and their relation to each other based on how they are used. So that is why it is able to uh, pick things faster. So I guess, Renee, when you said multiple meaning of a word, you're going back to how it is storing the mental map. Thank you for that. So when I put one word and it's predicting the next word, it is able to bring that in context as in English word context. But there is one more thing. When I'm saying that I'm building an LLM with context, and I'm building an LLM with a bigger context, and I'm competition to the guys who are already building it, what is context? Guess what is context? And I'm sorry, guys, I just need to get my dog back in. I apologize. So you can tell me what is context. Please come in. Thank you, guys. So we are talking LLM is made of large language, large dictionary corpus of language data, which is words and text, and it is generating. And I just now showed you in how LLM is built is using transformer architecture, which means it is getting the relationship of words to other words and making a mental map. And so when a large language model is trained with lots of data, it's not chunked in words. It is chunked in words, but it is a huge set of words, and it is understanding the context of words to relation to each other, what word comes next. That's why it's making that prediction quickly. Yes, it is based on similar conversation. What is based on similar conversation means? So if you have a conversation, no, I don't know what is based on similar conversation. I'm making things up. You can tell me more on what is based on similar conversation. And when you say based on similar conversation, I'm thinking when I said I want to dance with somebody and that song showed up, and I changed that to I want to dance with a llama. And then I started asking about the llama, what is based on similar conversation? So you could go back to Google having the world search, not sharing. We don't know what that is, but it is because Google did not was not willing to share their data out there, right? All the technology companies don't share their data because it's there. They store it as their asset and say that what knowledge we get from this data is ours. We are not sharing with you. And they trained their model, and they trained traditional deep learning models, which was fetching something from memory. Instead, it's not fetching, it is generating. That's how it is doing the new thing. So it is learning the words and relationship of other words, and it makes a mental map. And from that mental map, it is generating the contextual words. So it continues to speak, right? It gives one word, uh, and another word is the next word. It gives that continuously, so it feels like it is talking to us in language, right? We feel like we're talking to a human when we're talking to ChatGPT or Gemini. So Emanuele, you can add more if you want, but I want to understand whether I'm say thinking the same thing when you say similar conversation. And thank you for those of you who are here on the chat. So those of you who are watching me out there on LinkedIn might suddenly see that I'm just referencing something here. I'm looking at the chat. I'm lucky to see the chat, and that chat is not streaming. So those of you who are writing on the chat, don't worry about privacy, because unless I'm calling that out, but I'm not going to show the chat here. So
Yeah, but I
based
think,
on,
yeah,
yes,
the way I was thinking is like if you have a large body of words and sentences, and now you're focusing on one particular topic,
yeah,
in your case, dancing and llama, and
yeah,
then it's just like, okay, how many people are really looking to dance with a llama versus what's the interest in llamas, and then, dancing with other animals and and kind of putting that together. I guess I know it's a little crazy example, but I mean, if you're talking about maybe a technical subject or maybe you're talking about something else, then it's just, you really pull in towards those type of scenarios and conversations and situations. So that's the way I'm thinking. That's
okay.
kind of similar. What I'm thinking, a similar conversation. So
That's good. That's good. So you're talking about a specific topic, and so it's like instead of yeah, I did go somewhere with this whole llama thing. I'm struggling to keep that in context, to keep that conversation exactly like what you're saying, right? We want to keep the conversation flowing, talking about dancing with llamas. As a human, we continue talking. I'm sure between you and me, we can just have like an hour discussion of dancing with llamas and keep the context, right? But how do you get a machine, an AI, to keep that context? So um, so you're saying that it is going to keep the context of that conversation, in this case about dancing and llamas, and it could go to other um, animals. It's yeah I don't know, or it could be that I'm dancing and then you can say the dancing and say I'm singing, and I go into something else on another similar, right? This goes back, if you think about it, in e-commerce, Yash's favorite topic of recommendation engines is all built on um, what is similar to something else. So you bought this item, and what are similar items? You read this book, what are related books? And it goes with the whole the concept of that. So you could do that with conversations, but that's not what they're doing. So, and how would you chunk it? And it's a lot of work, because all they are doing is they are feeding words and lots of documents as words. um, so from what you're saying, I'm thinking there's an application layer to it, that you keep people. So if you're talking to a chatbot which is helping you with with the travel reservation, then you want to keep it in the context of that and not talk about dancing with llamas, right? So that is,
exactly, it just it's a the dancing with llama is not an easy one to dissect, but I mean, um, if you're talking like travel, you're talking engineering, you're talking weather, or you're talking certain topics, then that's the way I was
yes.
interpreting it.
Okay, so that's very, very, very good. So, so so remember I said we people are building models, and they're doing the training, pre-training, and they're building the models, and then when you get the Chat GPT, right? They build the GPT, right? And then when you get Chat GPT and the application of the search and everything else, it is an application. So what you're saying is now you're going to give this chatbot, but now it's going to be for travel industry, or it is going to be for healthcare or something else, right? And then you maintain the context. That is also context. That's brilliant. So context could mean industry topic, right? Or domain, right? In this case, you're saying maintaining the conversation within that domain is context. And when we are talking as humans and having a conversation, the context is defined in a chatbot as just continuing the context of continuing the thread of conversation. So if I'm talking about dancing, and then I'm saying dancing with the llama, and then the context could be everything related to llama, everything related to dancing, and you can go in many directions, but you don't know what I'm going to ask next. So a chatbot retains that context, ready to answer that, right? Do I have that window? And I'm going to go back, guys. And I started on dancing with llamas. I'm going to stick with that. Okay. So, and this is actually an example of how you can get to the answer, because uh, that's what all these AI are already there. So we said large language model is trained on large volume of data. We took Google as an example. This is the window. I'm going to go to a different. See, I have not signed up here for this Google experimental Google, so I have to sign into a different. Get out of here. I'm going to go to a different. Version of myself for Google, which is a different profile. Like Ananya said, it is a different profile that is going to give the answer, right? It is going to understand my history. So I am going to one where I just logged into a different Google profile, so that when I do search, it knows my history, but I also have given them permission here by this. And then I did the dance with the llama thing already here, right? So I want to dance with a bear. Okay, so it continues on, and it says continue the conversation and say, what bear should I pick? If I just said without the word dance. Okay, and then it still keeps the dancing bear, because it understands the context and it's continuing that, right? And so on. So in the example you gave, so I've beaten about this dancing llama and dancing bear topic, so I'm going to move forward. But what we have understood is, when we say context, it means many things. And the one thing that the world of chatbots and LLMs are thinking is, it's just maintaining the conversation. So I said dancing, and then I said dancing with the llama. I continued the last conversation with llama. It answered me. I said, now I want to dance with a bear. And I said, without using the word dance, I asked what type of bear. And it knew that I'm still talking about dancing with the bear. So that is the context that they mean. And to your point, now when you're thinking this, when you're thinking about building application, you're saying my customer, my domain, and that is context too, but they don't call it context. And what they do to get customer within that domain is done by fine tuning. So what you said about keeping them within the domain of conversation. So the LLM might be capable of talking all this dancing with the llama stuff, but we don't want that. We want it to be professional. We want it to have a certain tone. We want it to have a certain domain knowledge, and I want it to be more formal. I want it to be using the language that we use when it's a customer service chatbot, and the customer wants to come and cancel a ticket, and is in a hurry. The tone should be formal. You need to have some control that it is not going to talk about dancing with a llama. And in fact, we had this speaker last week, Pamela Gupta, talking about when the LLM goes bonkers and is throwing different answers at people because it had some bug upstream, because of the model that they built was behaving like that. They could plug it in, they could plug the model because it's coming from the cloud. And then when you're interacting, next day it could all be fixed. And so how do you manage that? What she called as incident management was that topic. So all that could happen, but you don't want that. So what Emmanuel is saying is, you do not want the LLM to kind of go bonkers, and you want it to have conversation within a domain, certain amount of formality within a certain domain. And so what you do is you actually go do something called fine tuning, which is you give so what we are talking about is how the LLM works. I'm going to continue that thread to where what you wanted to do. So it's a large language corpus trains this AI, using this transformer model. So in its brain, it understands relationship of words to other words so that it can continue the conversation in context. According to data science, it is continuing the conversation from one sentence to another, knowing what the previous sentence was. That's the simple concept of context there, so that it's continuing to talk to me. And then you come in and build applications. And the applications, you want the application to maintain the context in a human sense, where it is not going to it's going to, if you are a customer in the travel domain, you want it to talk in the travel domain. If you're talking healthcare, you want it to talk healthcare. If I'm chatting on a library computer and it is chatting, I want it to go fetch books, and the context is books, and the formality and the tone and all that sensitivity to dealing with variety of people and all that. So that's the fine tuning piece. So what you end up doing is you the model is built, say GPT, and from there comes the LLM, and the chatbot is built, which is an application. And then you say, no, no, this is not good enough. I wanted to talk only about chatting to children in the library, or to your example, the travel chatbot. Then you get as another set of data. Remember, LLM is trained with large volume of data. You just get a small volume of data, and you say, when I say cancel, what does that mean? And you say cancel the ticket. Or it could be in your travel contest. Instead of, the LLM is capable of talking about, every LLM is capable of talking about dancing with the llama. But in this case, it could be a dance concert, and you're canceling tickets or buying tickets or checking the status. And so when they say dance, don't throw the dancing with the llama. Then you say dance means the program. So you can actually have a word say dance means program, and canceling the dance means canceling the ticket, and things like that, right? And you map the words of what you want this chatbot to know in your domain, in that context, and you train it. And that is why the whole LLM, when you build this, it's called semi-supervised learning, because if you give it the world and it creates a mental map of all words with each other, it is essentially creating a neural network like it did in the past, but it is deep learning. It's doing that, and it is unsupervised because it's taking a lot of words. You're not labeling it. You're just saying, here are a bunch of words, right? Here is a whole bunch of document. Here is a whole language and a story and a poetry and all the words from forums and discussions from the internet and your feed. That's what it was trained. And that is all unstructured, no labeling, and that is unsupervised. Even if it is a transformer model compared to the past deep learning model, in its brain, it's a deep learning neural network. And then when it comes to building the chatbot, you come in and say dance means the program, canceling the dance is the ticket, and you give a bunch of words and you train it, and then you're doing it, and you're labeling, it's labeled, right? In the case of language translation that we want to learn, machine translation, you're taking one language what it means, and then you're saying what it means in the other language, and you're giving words and you're giving it context. And when you're doing that with an unstructured layer followed by a structured, not even layer, it's an unstructured whole AI followed by a structured layer, you're fine tuning. And that is called, then you're doing supervised learning, because you're doing the uh, um, next layer on top of this learning. It is supervised. So that's called semi-supervised. So essentially, in the end, when you are interacting with Google search or with your chatbot, and all kinds of other things, I recently learned that in a photo app, you can enter a text and it will go find the image for me, and it is actually getting the image from using words. And it could be doing LLM. I don't know if it is doing LLM. It looks like what you were saying earlier, that it is finding similar conversation. It could be a recommender system, but LLMs are creeping in everywhere, right? That because it is understanding context. So to wrap up this topic, in the sense of the English context, it just means you're talking about some topic and it retains that topic is the context. Understanding the context for a customer in terms of domain is typically not called context. I don't know what they call it. I think they just say we want it for this domain and they do fine tuning. And so when the LLM is built, um, the context is nothing but when I'm talking about something, it is going to remember 100 words around the same thing, or is it going to remember 1,000 words around it, or is it going to remember 10,000 words on the same topic? So when I say I want to dance with a llama, it is I doing something which happens to be dancing, which happens to be llama. So it can go in many, many, many directions. And how much of that distance, so an LLM is words connected to other words, how much of the distance of that words it is going to go in its memory, because if it has like billion parameters and it has like billion words, let's say billion words in its memory, every time I type the next sentence, it cannot go back and fetch billion words. It will cause a lot of latency. So context is, it is going to look at a word and its relationship to other words. And what did Rene say? When Rene said, for every word you understand the meaning of the word, multiple meanings of the word. So if you take a word and you say bank, and a bank could be, I'm going to be going to a bank to withdraw money, or I can bank on you. And so then it needs to go in its memory on what are the different words that mean bank, and then based on that it can branch on to what the next word could be. But how much of its memory is it going back every time it is chatting with me in inference? For that, the training is done defining context as nothing but a set of words. So in the training sense, when they are building, I've told you many, many times in many different contexts on fun topics of how a data scientist thinks differently um, from a product manager or business person like you who is building application. And this is a very beautiful example where it makes sense. We are having a conversation, keep the conversation going. And it makes sense that I'm talking about travel, just talk to me about travel, don't talk to me about dancing llamas. And the data scientist is not thinking like that when they're building models. So that is why they are improving and redefining and saying one more chatbot, not even one more chatbot, one more model. And there's more and more models coming out, because the fundamentally what the LLM is doing is storing words and connection of words to each other. That's there. They are training with more and more parameters with lots of data to build bigger models, because they want the accuracy to be better, right? So it is trained with a concentrated connection of words to multiple words. That's why they're making bigger and bigger LLMs. And then they want smaller models that will be trained just for travel. That's called small language model. So that is coming. But this concept of context is that it understands the context of conversation, so it doesn't throw the customer off balance. And they're saying, I don't know what you're talking, can I help you? And that's what most AI gets caught when it is talking and chatting, and at some point it feels like it's helping, and then it forgets it and say, I'm a chatbot and I can help you with this. And you go like, what are you talking about? I've just been talking to you all along about canceling my ticket and checking my status, and you're starting again. That is the context that they are training for. And it is nothing but a selection, a choice that is made in the brain of the model by the data scientist building the model, saying, I am going to have the context to be 100 words, or the context to be 10,000 words. So when I'm saying I want to dance with the llama, or I want to cancel the ticket, relative to that, how far are you going to go in inference in the brain of the model? That is determined by how the model is trained as context. And so they will say, as soon as I see a word, I will go to 10,000 words around it, so that it knows those 10,000 words and will continue to talk. And the minute you get out of the 10,000 word, it will lose context. And you can do that with ChatGPT and keep chatting and try different things, and at some point it will lose the context. But the more and more they're trying to not make you catch that by training in its memory. Does that make sense? If anybody has any question, I'll answer that. Otherwise, I want to move on. can the context window be changed during fine tuning? Who said that? That's a very good question. Yes. Yes. So, okay. So, there are two questions here. One is I've heard about RAG. Is that a type of fine tuning? And then can the context window be changed during fine tuning? So, I believe yes. So, what they are doing is originally the LLM was built as here's the model, go build the chatbot. Here is GPT 3.5, go build ChatGPT. And more people want to build chatbots on top of that, right? And so enterprise said, this is great, but like Emanuele said, I wanted to talk only about travel. I don't want it to talk about dancing llamas. And so the concept of fine tuning came in. But the difference with fine tuning is it's great for your own domain. But when you give a data, uh, the chatbot says, okay, let me go back to sharing my screen because I want to show one more thing in how the brain of the model works, because we said it's remembering, it's used on a model called transformer. It doesn't matter what it is called for the purpose of our learning. It's a mental map of words and the relationship to other words. And this one we said, what if it is referring those words, can it be a bigger set of words, right? Originally when they build the LLM, the context of what it understands, it's baked in the model. It was not something that was programmable, which means the model already learned context. That's why GPT was a big deal, because ChatGPT could understand context for a while and not get caught and start saying, hello, I am here to help you again in the middle of our conversation. So that was baked in the model. There was no flexibility. That's how it started, right? When the model is built, that's how it is started. But what they end up doing is they have something called weights and biases, which means here is a neural network. So in its brain, essentially, it is still a neural network. What I said, that they do supervised, unsupervised learning followed by supervised learning with the data you're giving, saying here is the dance means the program, cancel means canceling the ticket, and all that you're giving for context. In your fine tuning, what that fine tuning was doing is the whole neural networks, the chat gpt was given, the gpt, not chat gpt, the gpt was given, or the palm and the other models, all of them were actually a neural network. And the weights is biases is all this, how that knowledge is transferred over, right? So the last layer is what you're going to interact with. So the fine tuning changes the last layer. So the model, when you're interacting with a chatbot, which is built on GPT 3.5 or any kind of model, and then you're building a chatbot and you say, do not talk to me about dancing, talk to me only about canceling tickets. That is this layer. So when you're doing fine tuning, you're just modifying the last layer to remember the context of conversation the way you want within your domain. So that is what fine tuning was doing. Okay. And I'm going to skip this. And this is all the list of various models from the past, as in November when I was talking to you guys, Lambda and BERT and GPT-3 and GPT-4 and Palm, right? Now there's like Mistral. Mistral was open source and now it's not open source anymore. And then there's a whole bunch of new models that is coming by the day, right? They're still building models at a foundation level, right? Foundation models is the models that the data scientist is building, and they're still building models, right? So the thing I wanted to show you was this aspect of how the fine tuning is happening at that level, right? So what they ended up doing was, um, if we gave this data and said travel means this, for a travel industry, and it changes the model at the last layer, that means the information you're giving about your domain specific information, which could be very specific to your industry or your company, that information is fed into the brain of the model. So enterprise doesn't want their data to go away, and next time somebody chats with the model, it is going to answer the way you want for the domain, but that your domain knowledge or what you brought in your supervised learning with your labels has been gobbled up by the bigger LLM. People don't want it in enterprise because of protecting their data. And so this whole concept of RAG was brought about, saying, I am going to create a separate data store. I'm going to keep my data and train the model to do RAG so that it goes. Um, so you take an existing LLM model and then you give a separate data store. So the data could be the same instructions that you were giving earlier about how to do things, and the translation and all that stuff for your domain, for your industry, for your secret sauce or something like that, for context of conversation, not the context as a duration of the conversation. And that was sitting in your own data store. And then now that is not gobbled up, so it is not sending it out. So GPT is not like taking it out to the world. And so that is RAG, and that is how it started. And now, to answer your question, as enterprise customers are trying this out, a lot of enterprise customers are piloting this, and they're saying, here's what I would like to do with the chatbot. So the earliest chatbots were all doing language, just customer support and chatting for information about company information to get help on very small use cases. And then they said, I want it on this domain, I want to talk this tone. Then they said, let's do fine tuning. And then they said, we don't want to give our privacy of our information, our secret sauce. Then they say, let's do RAG. So now they're saying the whole RAG is the big thing, and the whole architecture with RAG is growing by the day. And one of the things is, now it is giving information from your data, but it was talking in context. Going back to what we talked today was, in the brain of the LLM, it understood context, right? Which means duration of words, relationship to other words. So it could understand 10,000 words in context. Now you changed it on me and said, when I say dance, dance doesn't mean dancing with the llama, or dancing as in dancing as a human. Dance is the program. And now you changed it. Now the context is shrunk, right? It's limited to what you have given. So now if you continue the conversation on dance, it will either lose the context on the conversation, or it will go back to its memory and say, I don't have it. Let me go back and ask the brain of my LLM, what does dance mean? And it is going to bring dance with the llama. So that means does that make sense, guys? Are you with me here? You are giving context as domain from a data that you gave, and you're fine tuning the model. And you said, I don't want to fine tune it because I want to protect the privacy. So you're going to do RAG, and you're giving a data store, which is your information. But the minute you change this context of dance to dance is a program, cancel dance is cancel the tickets, right? And you gave a labeled data set, you've shrunk it to focus only on that. Now, when it cannot find that information, and the customer continues to keep talking about dance, and it has gone past just cancel the dance or move the dance, cost of the dance, or whatever it would do from a ticketing sense, now the more you cannot stop the model from going past its first layer of memory, which is what you fine tuned, or you made it fetch a data store, and it cannot go past that. It will go back. So Suresh, what we are talking about is, we got a beautiful definition of context as domain, which is at an application layer. We're talking about travel industry, where you're canceling a ticket for a dance performance. So dance means the performance or the contest, right? It is not dancing with the llama. And we fine tuned it, which is we changed the last layer with this label data. So we did the supervised learning on top of this unsupervised big monstrous model, which is trained on the world of data. And we said, okay, we don't want it to be fine tuning. We want it to be protective of our data. So we're going to keep our data store. It's going to go access the data store if it cannot, if first, and find the answer. So that data is not gobbled into the brain of the LLM. But when you build an application and it is chatting, the definition of real context is when it has the words and relationship of words to other words, how many words is it going to go recall in its memory to keep talking with me. And remember, many times when we do, many of us have done this dog versus mop exercise, and you say, here's a dog, here's this mop, and then you give a different example that is not in its memory. It is going to narrow fit. That's what all AI does. Even the huge models are narrow AI. That is why you hear this word called AGI, because they want the AI to be talking about anything and everything and the world like a human in context. And we don't have that. So what we have is still narrow AI, which means whatever it has in its brain is what it can get. Now we are restricting even that, and we say, we don't want you to bring everything from your brain, LLM. We want you to talk in context as a conversation, like language, so that you can continue and talk like a human, pretend to be a human to my customer. But the context of the conversation that I'm interested in at the application layer is the domain. And this domain, we're sticking with the example of travel. And it is a dance program for cancellation and changing the dates and all that stuff, right? So we're saying we're restricting your context to this domain, and we want you to talk only about that. So what the LLM will do is it will talk within that context. When it runs out of that context of the conversation of the rag or fine tuning that you gave, it will go back. You cannot stop the LLM from going back into its memory and now fetching the dancing with the llama. And it will throw a curveball on users. So to your point, Ananya, what we should do when we do RAG and say, here's the data store you're going to refer, and in that data, I'm actually giving you labeled data of the domain context that I want you to stick to. We also think of the duration of the context of how many words is it going to go back with each word in the sentence that the customer is talking, and expand that duration. And that is the context in the technical sense of training. And you can control that within RAG. So when you give the data store, you can give a huge data store and you say, I want this to be sliding context of this 100 words, 200 words. It's super expensive in training and in the tokens and accessing that. And so that context is typically not too big. You can say, why can't the context be the whole language? It cannot, because it has to. That means in its inference brain, I'm going to share that screen to show you the neural network. So when you're talking with the chatbot, the fine tuning is this last layer. Instead of fine tuning here, we are going to say put a separate RAG. So the model will go talk to RAG and then get the information. If it doesn't get it, it'll come here. So if it is going into huge volume of data, it is going to churn. And in inference, right, whenever you talk to it live in production is inference, it is going to go into the brain. The more it goes deeper, it's going to cost you time, because there will be latency. It has to go fetch that. So that means what happens is you've got the neural network trained with billions of parameters. It costs lots of trees and water to train that. And now you're saying, forget all that. I'm going to treat you like my English teacher. You're able to talk English. I'm just going to deal with the business logic layer separately in this RAG thing. And then as soon as you run out of the number of words you have in context in the RAG, it's going to go back into its memory and start dancing with the llama. So does this make sense? Any question? Because I just want to go to one more point, and I'm going to wrap up on the actual building of the LLM. And we went through this the last time we did. There was no RAG, and there was fine tuning, I believe. But this whole concept of where we are going and multiple RAG architecture and how to do that is this new world. Because of which, when you say LLM, so people are choosing, do they want to, open source or closed source? That's become a non-issue after Mistral kind of bailed on us. But people are still concerned about vendor lock and privacy and all that stuff. And this is something that Vanama had put together for us, comparing different models that's out there. And this was still before Christmas last year, so it is little dated. But it said, think of the kind of category that you will put what the LLM capability is, and whether it is a closed or open source. And I will put this deck out. We have created a little community area on Weekly Wed on Teachable, where you guys signed up for Weekly Wed in the beginning. So Business School of AI, Teachable.Business School of AI, and I will make sure that you get this deck back so you can continue on conversation. So I want to bring us back to what is LLM capable of. It is doing machine translation. It is generating text when we did the chat, right? It's just guessing the next word. And it is going to a knowledge repository, fine-tuning or RAG now. That the knowledge answering is the one that has blown up, and there is a lot of innovation happening. And then it is going to say, I ask this, you give me this. That's the response generation. And then it can even classify your data for sentiment. So that is what the whole LLM capability is, right, these days. So this is what I had covered in the previous thing, so I'm not going to go back to that. But I wanted to show, if you were going to integrate your LLM into your workflow, where would you spend, where would you spend? Is it going to be time or money? If you're going to do chatbots, right? You're going to think about not just what the chatbot is doing. Domain is beautiful, it's important, but you have to think of this integration on where you're going. That is the piece that has kind of become much bigger. So I want to pause. As I did the last round, I kind of zipped through that. So I want feedback. Now we are where we are, right? We have covered RAG in a past session. Would you like to? So one of the things we were going to teach you, and it was going to be a Python-based exercise on starting from scratch. So the way the LLM space is moving, and when I got started, I said that speaker who was going to give us the Python is not here. So I'm going to go back into quiz on LLM to bring you up to speed from past November, where we left, to where we are. So where we were in November is that deck I was sharing on how the LLM works and the different capabilities, and this whole thing of knowledge sharing that it gives you a response to the customer has kind of blown up from fine tuning to RAG and different RAG architectures, so that the LLM has a longer context is one of the requirement in that you want control within the RAG data store. And when it gives an output from RAG, whether it is going to go back, controlling that output to be what you want. You don't want it to have something in its memory, and it is getting something that you don't want. More and more RAG is creating a layer on top of an existing LLM to create the application, but it is bringing more structure, the data, uh, uh, almost like a rule-based engine into the world of LLMs, which is kind of like, unstructured and the world for you. So that's going to be expensive. It's not just that the more control you want, you're going to bake that control into your rules. Then you're kind of rebuilding it. It's almost like creating a old client server model application, and it's going to be expensive and not scalable. And that's why we moved towards AI, and then we said traditional AI, and then we came to this. um, so the question is, today when you're hearing about LLMs, I think you should, if so, one is if you're building from scratch and for a new language translation, that's happening. II is one. The speaker will come, Bello will come next week, and they had given a whole Python, and we will do the Python exercise of starting from scratch and how do you do pre-training and how do you do fine tuning to get a whole new language. So it's language translation for starting from scratch on a data set that you have never seen before, right? That's the machine translation piece that is being done for many languages. That is happening for an existing language where you already have an LLM. Now enterprise is saying this is not good enough. I want it to be privacy preserving. I want it to have conversation only within this domain. The privacy preserving started the RAG, sticking with the specific domain, went from fine tuning to RAG, and then and within RAG now we are having multiple architectures to have better control. Everything that was a limitation within the LLM, such as context, is now kind of being refurbished essentially using RAG. So that's why you see multiple RAG architectures. And then to wrap it up, the word LLM used to mean the models that I was listing, and there's a bunch of foundation models. Now there are layers of LLM, like we saw with Latimer. Latimer says, here I'm an LLM, I will talk to you. It is an LLM that is fine, which is built on top of an existing. So you take an LLM and you create a bunch of RAG architecture, and then you generate another LLM on top of it. And we're seeing that. And then there are small LLMs that are built just like what Emmanuel, you were saying on this domain. They're just saying, why don't I just take travel domain, take a lot of data for context, and train it, and just I want the LLM to just talk to me about travel. I don't want it to talk about dancing. I don't want it to talk about anything else. And so there are these concept of small language models that is being built. And I saw one more. There was, and everything is called an LLM. That's the beauty of it. There was one more that came from Microsoft that I just saw. I was very surprised that it came recently on this, taking this last layer for RAG and um, getting enterprise to be able to use that. And they also called it a new model. So I will find that for you guys. So to wrap it up, RAG is still the hot new tech, and what you knew as RAG from 3 months is not RAG anymore. It is RAG, but they just call it multiple RAG architectures. And so there's a lot more happening in that space. So unless you have any last burning question, I'm going to wrap up. And I would like feedback from you on where do we take this. So I was thinking we can learn next about machine translation end to end. We can go in multiple directions of where we want to go. We have not done building a chatbot end to end, which is a promise. I will get to that. We can do a lot more RAG architecture. What else would you like to learn? What would be more helpful? So give me feedback, and we will follow up and continue on our learning with Weekly Wednesdays. Thank you, everybody. With that, I'm going to stop the recording. And for those of you who are on LinkedIn, I didn't do justice because the class here was pretty energizing and engaged. And so I did not follow up on your questions. So I'll come check if you have questions. And I appreciate your time being here. Thank you so much. And if you have questions on the LinkedIn, you can post it or tag a friend, and I will come and answer questions. And I want your feedback on what do we do and what kind of topics do we pick up to continue our learning journey, because we barely got started. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. And the community for this will be Business School of AI.teachable.com. So if you just follow Business School of AI, I will come and post the link, and you can join our community to continue the conversation. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, Sudha.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Ananya. Thank you, Renee.